change. It's something we all experience every day, and as leaders, it is part and parcel of our role. After all, if everything was perfect and no change was needed, would we even need leaders? Okay, back to reality. What if you had a revolutionary approach to change? And what if that approach stood on the head and turned some things around from what you believe about change today? But those changes actually made it work better. If you're intrigued, you're in the right place. So don't go anywhere. Welcome to another episode of the Remarkable Leadership Podcast, where we are here to help leaders like you make a bigger difference, grow personally and professionally, and change the world for the better. If you are listening to this podcast, you could be live for future episodes on your favorite social platform. You can get all the information about when they're happening and how you can be a part of the live streams by joining our Facebook or LinkedIn groups, just two of the platforms where these start. And you can do that by going to remarkablepodcast.com/Facebook or remarkablepodcast.com/LinkedIn to get all of the inside scoop. If you like what you are hearing today and want to help in developing your leaders in your organization, let's talk. Reach out to us at info@kevineikenberry.com. We'll schedule time to learn more about your needs and share how and discover how we might be able to help. With that, let me bring in my guest. The housekeeping is complete, and my guest is now here with me. His name is Mohammad Anwar, and let me introduce him officially, or more completely, I suppose I should say, and then we'll get started. He is the president and CEO of both Softway and Culture Plus, and the Wall Street Journal bestselling author of Love as a Business Strategy, Resilience, Belonging, and Success. Our conversation today is about his newest book, Love as a Change Strategy, and we're going to talk about that today: innovation, growth, and transformation. At just 20 years old, while pursuing his BS in computer science with a minor in mathematics at the University of Houston, he launched Softway with his family. What began in 2003 as a small web development company for local merchants has since grown into a global people-first consulting firm specializing in digital transformation, culture, communication, and AI integration without sacrificing humanity. That's a good place to start. Mohammad, welcome to the show. Glad you're here.
Thank you. Thank you for having me, Kevin. I'm excited to be here.
It is my pleasure. When I said at the beginning, and what I say at the beginning of every episode, this show is about helping leaders make a bigger positive difference in the world. That's what this book is about, in my opinion.
Yes.
And so I'm super excited for us to have this conversation. The book, again, is titled Love as a Change Strategy. And so I want to start here. Tell me what the big idea of the book is, because we're going to make that the focal point of our conversation. So what's the big idea?
So the big idea is that, number one, there's rapid change happening around us, and it's only going to get more rapid in terms of amount of change. Us as humans and humanity have to be faced with, especially when it comes to the workplace. And we know for a fact that a lot of the change initiatives that get deployed don't achieve the results they anticipate. 78% of the change initiatives fail to achieve the outcomes we started for. So the big idea is, how can
It's not a
we
very good report card, by the way.
Okay. Yes, it's not a very good report card. Absolutely. So the big idea is, how can we create more change effectiveness or get humans to adapt to change readily to help achieve the outcomes we desire at a high rate of success versus where it is today? And we believe that love is a catalyst to help change stick. That's the big idea.
Okay, there are people who are listening.
Yes.
Listen, there may be people who've already tuned out, which we can't help. But the people that are listening are asking the question, wait a minute, love?
Yeah.
So let's start here, since you've now put that word, that four-letter word, in the title of two books.
Yes.
In this context, what do you mean by that? Let's start there.
Yeah. So in the context of work or business or change strategy. We're not talking, number one, I'll clear up the air. We're not talking about the romantic rom-com type kind of love where your hot best friend is your soulmate, or we're walking down the prairie with no running water but everybody's so happy. That's not the kind of love we're talking about. We're talking about simply putting people at the center of all our business decisions and change strategy. It's starting with people, where people are able to have the necessary honest conversations and not put things under the rug, where we're able to have tough love conversations and have honest conversations and get through conflict so that we can come out on the other side with transformed relationships, where we're able to lead people through embracing change, not detesting it, where we're able to help people appreciate that when there is safety for us to be creative and lead change from a place of psychological safety versus fear. That is what we're talking about. And so, what we realize is that a lot of the change initiatives today, with some of the frameworks that are available and organizations prescribe to, we prescribe to creating a manufactured burning platform, which is essentially a fear-born approach to let people to come along and follow the change. And while I think there's a time and place for that type of change, love allows us to create safety for people to keep wanting or desiring change without going to a place of fear, where the amygdala part of the brain gets activated and all they think about is flight, fight, or freeze. Here we're saying, let's do it in a psychological safe manner where the executive function of the brain is still active, so they're actively receiving the change and willing to adapt, to grow with it, to embrace it, to uh, you know create the outcomes we desire with the changes we're trying to institute. And love creates an environment which we describe as culture of love, that allows us to create cultures of change readiness, where people of the organization are more willing to embrace change versus resist it. So that's what we mean when we talk about love as a change strategy.
So one of the things when I was reading the book, when I got to the
Yeah,
you told the story. Most people have heard of the burning platform. Most people don't actually. I have found most people don't actually know the source story. But you tell the source story, and I smiled when you sort of just said it, that this is almost like the anti-burning platform approach, and I smiled because that very much aligns with the way we talk about it, and how, like I'm saying, like, yeah, you can get people to want to leave the current state, but if all they're doing is jumping off, they may not be jumping where you want them to go. So there's lots of challenges there, and that's just an example, everybody, of how I think this conversation and this approach sort of stands some of your conventional knowledge or conventional wisdom on its head a little bit. Um, how did you come to the conclusion that love is the change strategy, love is the business strategy, as you've described it? How did you all as an organization, and but actually before you answer that,
yeah,
let's say to everybody in the that's watching or listening that this book is interesting in its makeup, because there are lots of books that are business parables, and there are lots of books that are story based, and there are lots of books that are sort of research based or whatever. This is a book that is an interesting mix of the two. There are parables, but they're based on real life stories in your organization.
that's
Um,
right.
and so I think as you read the book, you will have the answer to the question that I'm asking you. But everyone who's listening hasn't read it yet. So, like, how did you come, Muhammad, you and the team come to determine that love, as you've described it here, is the change strategy we should be employing?
Yeah, so it began almost 10 years ago. I was, I'd had my company for almost 13 years by that time, and I started it when I was 20 years old. And I had a lot of success running the company. And, by 10 years of running the company, I believe that I hit the pinnacle of success. I had over 300 employees, and I was driving my fancy cars, flying planes across Texas. And I believed I was living the American dream, especially because I'm an immigrant to this country. But in 2015, 2016, our company was on the verge of bankruptcy. We were hemorrhaging cash, losing employees left and right. Clients were firing us. And in a deep moment of introspection, um, I realized that this was actually all my fault. I was incredibly selfish. I was greedy. I had become power drunk. And I was the one who was almost, taking my company to near destruction because of my selfish attitude and behaviors. And it wasn't until I realized that this was my fault, that I started to look at myself as the reason for why the company was almost near destruction. But at the same time, I happened to go to a football game for my alma mater at University of Houston, and this is the 2015 season when they were having a remarkable season. So I got tickets to go to this game right in the midst of I had to go through layoffs. I didn't know if I could keep the doors of Software open even a month longer. I show up to this game just willing to forget about all my life challenges and just go have a good time. And we were 9-0 at the time. This could have been our 10th game, 10th victory. And we went into the fourth quarter with a 20-point deficit, playing with a third string quarterback. And the stadium started to empty out. ESPN Game Tracker had us at 0.1% chance to win that night. And I debated to leave the stadium because even I was disappointed. But something inside of me told me, stay back, be there till the end, support your team. I'm glad I did because I ended up witnessing one of the best comebacks in Cougar football history. We ended up winning that night and went on to be 10-0. And at that point in time, I was so inspired, rejuvenated almost, that I started to see software through the eyes of the Houston Cougar football team. And I envisioned our own fourth quarter financial comeback. And I was going to go back and not give up. I was going to fight. So Monday rolled in, went into the office, logged onto Facebook Live at about 11 a.m. to see then rookie head coach Tom Herman speak to the press. I was very inspired by how he had taken this mediocre team in his first year head coaching position and made them an undefeated team. And in the press conference, the reporter asked him, "Hey, what would you attribute to the resiliency and the comeback victory Saturday night?" It's what kind of like he said that changed the course of my life and software. He said it was love. And he began to expand and say it's not the love you dog, love you bro kind of love, but it's the genuine love where the players love each other, where you hold the other heart in the hand kind of love. And it's the kind of love where the players go on the field not to fight for themselves, but fight for their teammates next to you. And that's how you build championship level teams. And that's how you win games like Saturday night. So as he said all of this, like my mind was just exploding because that was not at all what I was expecting. But from that moment, I realized I did not love my team. I did not care for my team. And I committed to go on a journey where I would learn to love my team, change my behaviors, and create an environment where people were empowered to learn, grow, make mistakes, forgive one another, thereby creating an environment of resilience, belonging, and success. And that's kind of what gave birth to Love as a Strategy because 3 years into the journey, our company went from barely surviving to thriving. And from there on, we've been in this environment where we realize that love can be a business strategy and love can be a change strategy. Love can be a strategy. As a strategy is what our whole philosophy is. And we have a framework, and we've been, developing it further. And the recent book with Love as a Change Strategy is the book that we instituted, given the environments that we're going through, what we're experiencing, where we needed to go through rapid change in our own business. And we're still going through change. Right now, AI has created a lot of turmoil in terms of technology and the workplace and the environment. And we're having to use our framework of Love as a Change Strategy to help even adapt to AI and empower organizations and leading this AI transformation effort with a human centered approach. So we call it humane first and so forth. So that's kind of the genesis, really, is from football. Arguably the most masculine sport on the planet is where I learned love. And I decided to borrow it into the business, into my business, and experiment with it, lead with it. I'm still on that journey, and we continue to evolve. And we're seeing no matter what the situation, love can be a strategy to achieve higher success.
So in the book, you talk about six principles, and we're not going to have time to go into all of them. We'll do it. We'll do that
Sure.
in a second. But one of the things that you talk about, and it's a short section in the book, but it really is an underpinning for a lot of what you've talked about, and I think will help uh, people see where we're headed. There's this short section where you say Maslow's hierarchy, which
Yes.
most of us learn sometime in school. You say Maslow's hierarchy is BS.
Yes.
So tell us why, and then hopefully you can help hook that together with where we've been and where we're headed.
Yeah. So the Maslow's hierarchy of needs is something that a lot of different people have probably studied and prescribed to in understanding the human's ability to reach self-actualization. And it starts with physiological needs, right, and then safety, and then love and belonging, and then it gets all the way to self-actualization, the pyramid. And what we say is that uh, he's got it wrong, and even he knew it technically. But the reality is that love and belonging should be the foundation, because for us as humans, a baby, when a baby is born, they can't be going and getting their own physiological needs met. They can't go find food and start eating and find safety on their own. They rely on the mother, the parents, the family, the community, the society. And even today, when we have newborns, I'm like, there's no way without hospitals, without our community, without the parents, without the families, the school systems, the daycares, like all of these societal beings coming together to put food on our table, to have grocery stores be stocked with food, that we can achieve physiological safety. So, and physiological needs and safety, we need love and belonging. So love and belonging needs to be the first layer before we can achieve physiological needs met and before we can achieve safety. So that's the order that we think he got it wrong, because love and belonging is the foundation.
So in your six principles, the first three are really about that belonging, about the relational component, if you will. Um, so I'm just going to say those first three, and I'm going to let you talk about sort of again. We know we don't have time to talk about everything. So like of the first three, where would you go? The first three are embrace discomfort, prioritize relationships, and practice empathetic curiosity. So, what would you? Let's do it this way. Which of those, as you talk about them with others, do they misunderstand or misinterpret? Like we all
Mhm.
know what those words are, right?
Yeah.
Where do you need to set us straight about those three things, or help us be clearer about those three things?
So first of all, I'd start off with just quickly saying that we prescribe to principles versus process, because process is brittle. Today, a lot of change programs or change management systems are all based on process, and the problem with process is that as long as the change is not changed, the process will work. But also, processes are put into place to be efficient, maybe not necessarily effective. And so we don't believe that processes can be a good structural element to guide people through change. So instead, we prescribe to what we call principles, because principles are founded on behavior and are anchored between behavior and process. They're like the middle ground where it gives you enough of guardrails for us to operate even in times of uncertainty, with still knowing where we're heading, but giving us enough freedom to be able to uh, operate, make decisions, and behave in ways in times of uncertainty. So we came up with these six principles of change that can guide any organization and its people through change, to lead change and embrace change and adapt to change. So the first three principles that you talked about, with embrace discomfort, prioritize relationship, and practice empathetic curiosity, are three principles. When put together and applied together, it allows us to really understand what are the beliefs and experiences that us humans hold on to or have built our behaviors from, that are coming in the way of embracing or adapting change. Why is it that us as humans are resisting change or not willing to adapt to change? A lot of the times you hear today's frameworks are like explain the why of the change and people will come along. Well, I think that does not work either, because it's not that people are too naive or dumb to understand why organizations have to make a change decision. They understand it, but they still resist it. And that's because beneath the surface, which is not visible to us, people have beliefs and experiences, because they're like, last time our company rolled this change, it was a horrible experience. So why should I believe this change is going to be any better? Right? And those beliefs are what are really coming in the way of resistance, not understanding the why. So what we say is, if you use these principles, and you'll get to diagnose what are the beliefs and experiences that people may have or holding on to that is making them resist the change. Once you uncover those beliefs and experiences by practicing these principles, which is, let me prioritize my relationship so you can actually trust me. Let me go ahead and embrace the discomfort and have the conversation where I suspend my judgment and I practice curiosity from a place of empathy. And that's uncomfortable for us to do as leaders, because we got to learn to shut up and listen. So we have to shut up and listen to what the other people think without judgment. That's extremely hard. So we have to embrace discomfort, do that so I can really appreciate why is this team member not wanting to get on this change? Why are they resisting to this change? So once you diagnose and uncover, oh, it's because of this experience, it's because they have this belief, then you use the next three principles, which are experiment, wield your influence, and be effective, to change experiences that would then change their beliefs. So create experiences that would change their beliefs so that they're more willing to adapt. So the first three principles are meant to help diagnose what are the beliefs and experiences why people are resisting. And the next three principles are guardrails to help you create a safe environment with love to experiment and wield influence, uh, and be effective versus just being efficient with that check the box. And that way you're able to change people's beliefs so they come along with you on the journey to embrace the change. So that's how those, in a nutshell, these six principles guide leaders to lead change, but also individuals to embrace change.
So it was curious to me, um, as I started to read the book, that you didn't just say practice curiosity, but practice empathetic
Mhm.
curiosity. And you've sort of pointed us in that way in this sort of high level description. But say more about why the word empathetic is in there. It's not just being curious, being empathetically curious, if you will. Why
Yeah.
is that? Why is that purposely included?
Yeah, because as leaders, sometimes we can ask questions from a place of curiosity to kind of defeat a person's argument or to try to poke holes. And we wanted to use the word empathy because we're trying to say, don't ask questions from a place of curiosity as to what you would do or you would want to do in that person's position, but rather, what is the person that you're practicing curiosity with? What is it really that they're feeling and going through? And it's about them, and it's not about you. It's not about what would I do if I was them. It's more about what is it about them that I need to try and understand. So it's changing that, because a lot of times leaders mistake empathy for, well, what would I do if I was in their shoes? No, that's not empathy. That's just you projecting what you would do if you were them. We're talking about empathy where you're really shutting down yourselves to just listen, to understand emotionally, um, what are they feeling, why are they feeling the way they're feeling, and what is it that is driving that feeling. And so it requires us to practice real empathy, and that's why we wanted to say empathetic curiosity and not just curiosity.
So someone's listening
Yeah.
and they're thinking, "Oh, that sounds great," but I have two buts. But number one is, but I don't have time to do all this. Like I've got a real job to do. Number one,
Mhm.
and number two is I didn't go to school to be a psychologist. So like, how do you respond to those two
Yeah. Yeah.
concerns?
So first of all, we have a saying that busyness is the new comfort for leaders today, right? So our number one principle is embrace discomfort, which means leading change is uncomfortable. So if your comfort is, I'm too busy, so I can't do this, well, I'd argue that That's just your comfort, your excuse to not do the hard work. So as leaders, we have to do the hard work, and that means busyness is it can be an excuse. If you look at even in our personal lives, like, hey, why, you have health issues, should you be going to the gym? Oh, I don't have time, when am I going to go to the gym? It's all an excuse. It's our comfort to not do the uncomfortable things. Number one, that's the response to that. Leaders can't say they don't have time. You're a leader because you're meant to solve problems and challenges, and you need to know how to deal with the availability of time and prioritizing where the hard work needs to happen. Second, when you say I'm not a psychologist, why should I practice this? I'm not asking anybody to be a psychologist. We're just asking you to be a human and practice emotional intelligence. That's what empathy is. It's not a therapy, it is emotional intelligence, being able to appreciate and read what the room is, what your people are going and feeling through, is what makes you an effective leader, to be able to lead from that capacity. That's all we're talking about. We're not asking you to go to counseling sessions. So that's the difference. We're only asking you to be human and practice emotional intelligence, which is essentially empathy.
So you and your organization work with other organizations on these ideas.
Mhm.
Which of the principles is the one that you either get the most pushback on, or um, people have the most trouble with? Even if they're not resisting the idea, they're having trouble implementing.
Yeah,
Which one would you say?
I would say embrace discomfort by far is the hardest principle for that I've experienced with, even for myself, but also for other leaders, because human by human nature we are creatures of comfort. We like comfort, we don't like discomfort. But the beautiful thing about discomfort, when it is productive, it leads to growth and transformation. And by that, I have to give an analogy of the cows versus the buffaloes. So when a herd of cows are approached by a storm, they run away from the storm and the storm follows them, and so they end up staying in the storm longer before the storm passes over them. Versus the herd of buffaloes, they actually run into the storm and they're out of the storm a lot faster. So similarly, us as humans, when we resist discomfort or run away from discomfort, we're not going to grow and transform, we're avoiding it. Whereas when discomfort is approached your way, leaning into it is what leads to the most growth. And if you look back, like if I was to talk to my old self, like 23 years ago or 25 years ago, when I was just 18 years old, and I'd say, hey, this is what I'm doing today. I wrote two books on love. I'm leading a whole company. I, I I go around the world talking about how love is a strategy. My 18-year-old version would be like, "What? What are you talking about? Talking about love? What's wrong with you? Like, I never expected that's what you'd grow into, right?"
Consumer, computer science and mathematics.
Exactly. Yeah. And like, what? Why would you write a book on love? What has this got to do with the degree we're studying, right? Like, so really, what happens is most of the time, us humans don't appreciate the discomfort that led us to the growth. But a lot of the times it is discomfort that has led us to the path of success. So all of us, if we look back, some of the hardest times we go through our life has been the best transformational experience that have made us who we are. And so when we retrospectively look at it, we point out to all the uncomfortable times that we went through that was transformational for us. But when we look forward, we don't want to embrace discomfort. Well, we have historical evidence that almost all of us grew by nature of discomfort and hard work. Then why is it that when we're looking forward facing, we resist the idea of discomfort or hard times? So this principle is the hardest because change by nature creates discomfort, because it creates uncertainty, and so people avoid it. And what we say is like, hey, if you embrace the discomfort, there is growth on the other side. Now, of course, all of it is up to tolerable tolerable levels, or if that's a word, you know what I mean. Like how much you can tolerate also determines how much discomfort you can take. But once it's in productive limits, it leads to growth. So lean into it.
Which is why everybody, the last chapter is entitled Choose your hard. So I have got to ask you a couple other things before we wrap up.
Sure.
And I'm going to really shift gears here. Um, I just want to say one other thing before I do that. Um, so, as you all were listening today, I said at the beginning that this is a different kind of book because it intersperses like personal organizational stories, not a parable, real life thing with the real people's names and all that in and the messiness of it in with these principles as a way to illustrate the principles. And I think that Mohammed has described has followed that approach in this conversation. So if you've enjoyed the approach of this conversation, I'm confident you're going to love the book. And we'll talk a little bit more about where you can get your book and all that in a second. But two other questions before we wrap up. First, what do you do for fun?
I love fitness, so I like working out, and I do MMA, mixed martial arts. Every Friday I spar, um, and yeah, and I watch a lot of college sports. I love college sports over professional leagues.
You and I are going to have a short conversation about this after the show's over about that. We will do that in
Okay.
a minute. Um,
Yeah.
uh, everybody, 500, let's see, 524 episodes.
Mm.
First guest ever to say, I spar MMA. Just say it. So when you're not traveling the world, leading your team, being a dad, sparring in MMA, watching college sports, what are you reading?
Yes, so I this morning I read Wisdom Takes Work by Ryan Holiday. I've been almost through the book, but I swap between multiple books, and the other book that I'm reading in parallel is The Empire of AI is the second book that I'm reading. So those are the two books that I'm reading simultaneously currently.
I didn't. Which Ryan Holiday book did you say?
Wisdom Takes Work.
Thank you.
Yes.
That sounds like it matches with what we were just talking about, everybody. Uh,
Yes.
all right. We'll have those as well as Love is a Change Strategy in the show notes for you. And so before we go, Mohammed,
Yes.
uh, where can we learn more? Where do you want to point people? If they want to learn more about your team, your work, the books, where do you want to point people?
Yeah, I would say if you want to learn about our organization where we help companies go through a people first transformation approach, it would be softway.com, softway.com. And if you'd like to purchase our books or learn more about love as a strategy, you'd go to loveasastrategy.com. And if you are interested to lead change with love, we have built an AI first product named after my son called Mosin.app. It's a change partner the humane way and helps leaders lead change with love. It becomes your partner in building your change strategy and managing change with love. So if you want to go to that, that is mosen.app, mosin.app.
Awesome. So now, before we say goodbye to Mohammed and to all of you, I'm done asking him questions. I have one question for you. It's the question I ask every single episode, and it is for you as a participant, as a learner, as a listener. And that is, now what? What action will you take as a result of this? While it's usually true on these uh, conversations that there may be things you've heard that are hard to hear or that you sort of know are right but you're not sure what to do with, I'm confident that that's true today. And so it's one thing to say, hey, I got a new insight, I thought that was interesting, he's really smart, I hope I was entertained, I hope all that's true. And what I hope more than that, and I'm confident Mohammed would say the same, is that what are you going to do? What action are you going to take? What are you going to do to embrace the discomfort? What are you going to do to move forward? What did you hear or learn today that you could do something with tomorrow or yet this afternoon to make your work as a leader be more effective? That's the biggest challenge here. It's the biggest opportunity here is that you take action on what you learned. I hope that you do that. Um, Mohammed, thank you so much for being here. I've been looking
Yes.
forward to our conversation and glad we had the chance to do it.
No, it's my pleasure. Thank you for having me, Kevin.
And so, everybody, that concludes this week's episode. But we'll be back next week, right? So, if this is your first time, you didn't know that, but now you do. And if you've been here before and you sort of randomly find us once in a while, well, make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss any future episodes. And if this is your first time, make sure you do subscribe so you can be back with us next week for another episode of the Remarkable Leadership Podcast.